The Education of Gifted and Super-Gifted Children by Roberto Assagioli. The source of this essay, which was published in 1960, is the Psychosynthesis Research Foundation, issue number 8. This essay is read by Jan Kuniholm. Gifted Children with Special Needs. It might seem superfluous to emphasize the importance of recognizing gifted children, of educating them with special care, and of working on the ways and means of such education. But the fact is that, in spite of the great interest aroused by these problems, resulting recently in interesting experimentation and a number of studies, particularly in America, in many countries there has been practically no activity in this direction, very much more can and should be done. Some of the principles involved and the methods used call for careful examination and frank discussion. The gifted, and particularly those among them who are super gifted, differ widely from each other and require correspondingly diverse handling. As a first broad approximation, they can be divided into two groups. 1. Those who are gifted in a general or multiple way and demonstrate a marked superiority over the average in all or several fields. They are usually healthy, strong, and sure of themselves. Their education should not present specific difficulties. The problem is rather to offer them the most favorable conditions for self-development and the utilization of their gifts. These conditions will be considered later. There is perhaps some particular direction in which they do need help and guidance, the choice of which of their various talents should receive specific training, so that they may avoid indecision, delays, and a wasteful scattering of energies. The second group is different and presents difficult educational problems. It comprises those possessing a specific gift so exceptional as to border upon or enter the field of genius, but having side by side with it serious deficiencies or lack of balance in other aspects of their personalities. In this group we find young people who have artistic, literary, musical, and in some cases mathematical abilities, but are hypersensitive, over-emotional, and over-imaginative. They often are physically weak or clumsy, impractical, and absent-minded. They are thus generally neither understood nor appreciated by parents or teachers, and are apt to be the target of the ridicule or antagonism of their fellow students. Such lack of understanding and appreciation, and the consequent ineptitude in dealing with these young people, are the cause of much suffering, despondency, and despair, or of revolt in many cases, and in others even of deviations or perversions. Among the many well-known instances of this kind we may mention Baudelaire, Verlaine, Strindberg, and Kafka. In other cases, adults, recognizing and appreciating the special gift, often endeavor to force its cultivation. Their aim is to produce an infant prodigy, as a musician, a precocious mathematician, or scientist, without taking into consideration the injurious consequences of such lopsided development. This sometimes means an actual exploitation, either by the family, due to vanity, ambition, or financial greed, or by the community. At present, owing to the rude awakening, by the launch of the Russian satellite Sputnik, of the Western powers, from a false sense of security and technical superiority, we are witnessing a frantic spotting and high-pressure training of young people whose gifts are particularly applicable to physics, chemistry, mathematics, and applied technology. But even outside this field there has been, and there is, an excessive tendency in modern life toward specialization and overvaluing of practical efficiency. In order to counteract this trend, a well-rounded, harmonious, and integrated education is necessary, as the best educators have recognized. Such education is doubly required in the case of gifted young people. There is another and even more important reason which should induce us to do our utmost on behalf of these gifted children: the realization of how precious they are to humanity. In our present period of transition and planetary crisis, we are urgently in need of individuals who are superior to the average, intellectually as well as morally. They are the ones on whose shoulders in the future will lie the responsibility of guiding the disoriented and distressed peoples of the world. And this they will have to do not only on behalf of the blind and restless masses, but also for the intelligentsia, many of whom today lack vision, are supercritical, negative, desperate, and bitter. Our one great hope is our superior children, who will lead humanity to a brighter future, who will be the inaugurators of a new civilization and a new culture more in accord with the needs and requirements of the new era. Our gifted children of today will tomorrow be our scientists, authors, artists, politicians, economists, and teachers. The more intelligent and the more effective the help we now give them, the sooner and the better will they be able to develop their precious talents and make full use of them for the benefit of humanity. What has been done about all this so far? A good start has been made, particularly in the USA, with special classes, accelerated and enriched courses, and a few schools for gifted children. A clear exposition and comprehensive survey is contained in the 1957 book, Educating Gifted Children, by Robert F. DeHaan and Robert J. Havikhurst. The American Association for Gifted Children, originally in New York City but now part of Duke University, is active in publicizing the importance and urgency of giving such children the most suitable education, and particularly in drawing the attention of teachers and parents to these problems. These efforts are valuable and praiseworthy, and they should be extended to include every part of the world, adapting the methods used to the psychology of the respective countries, that is, to the various characteristics which distinguish one nation from another, and also to the conditions under which they live. However, what is being done is not adequate either in extent or in scope. Not more than 5% of our country's high schools now employ systematic programs to encourage superior students to develop their academic potential, according to the conference report on the identification and education of the academically talented student in the American secondary school, published by NEA in 1958. Moreover, the great need for a special type of education shows itself in pupils who are from 11 to 18 years old. It is during these years that a child's evolutionary level manifests itself with clarity. These are not only years when exceptional gifts become apparent, but when, under inner stress and strain, the personality is being formed in all the young. This difficulty is considerably enhanced in superior children, because the richness of their natures and endowments complicates the process of their psychosynthesis. The super-gifted child. The existing special schools, classes, and courses seek within the existing framework of education to meet the needs of gifted children, who are estimated at 10% of the school population. But the system is not adapted to the smaller number of the really super-gifted children, described by Drs. DeHaan and Havikhurst in Educating Gifted Children as the extremely gifted, the 0.1% of public school children. Their superiority lies not only in some specific talent, but often in their outstanding moral and spiritual qualities. Such young people need a very special type of education, extremely individual, and their teachers must be of a correspondingly high personal caliber and educational competence. Such a difficult task can best be accomplished in educational centers or institutes dedicated to this specific purpose. These are the reasons which impel us to present the need for the creation of centers for the education of super-gifted children, the outline of which follows. Such a center will not officially bear this name, and nothing in it should indicate to the pupils that they are considered superior. It will be for them simply a college in which modern and active methods of education will be used, and an international spirit fostered. They will also be offered varied opportunities to meet children and youths outside the center and to cooperate in activities for the benefit of the community. It is impossible to outline a complete educational program here, but we can enumerate the main points which we consider particularly appropriate for the exceptionally gifted. 1. Integrating education. This has two goals in view. A harmonious and well-balanced development of all aspects of the human being: physical, emotional, imaginative, mental, intuitive, spiritual. And B, the integration of these characteristics into an organic synthesis, into a personality that is self-conscious and well-constructed, that is, spiritual psychosynthesis. The danger to avoid is that of over-specialization, of exploiting the specific talent with which the child may be gifted. The more a child has a specialized talent, the more he needs to develop also other functions. Often, there is unbalance, and one must apply the principle of psychosynthesis, of harmonious integration, and help him to become a fully functioning whole being. 2. Employment of active methods and expressive techniques. The pupils should take an active part in the process of education. They should be encouraged and guided to learn by doing. This activity on their part is twofold. A. Action that aims at learning as much as possible through personal application and experimentation, that which humanity has already achieved, both in the field of knowledge and in regard to the mastery of the forces of nature. B. Creative manifestation of the pupil's own personality, of his own capacities and inner life, through the use of various expressive techniques such as speech and drama, writing, drawing and painting, modeling and sculpture, dance, and the composition and performance of music, or the carrying out of research, problem-solving, and experimenting by scientifically inclined students. 3. Differentiated education. In consideration of the great diversities of human beings, independent of the differences of IQ, it is obvious that education should take this diversity into full account and should be individualized as far as possible. This means that to really educate, one must apply different methods according to the specific character, needs, and problems of each pupil. The most marked diversities are those deriving from the different psychological types, such as extrovert and introvert, sensorial, emotional, mental, intuitive, and their several combinations, and those which derive from the special compound of physical, psychological, and spiritual elements which make a unique being out of each person. Differentiated education is based upon two fundamentals which at first seem to be opposites, but which can and should complement each other. A balanced application of each requires great ability on the part of the teacher. He must, after due recognition, adapt his methods to the psychological type to which each pupil belongs, while at the same time he must try to correct and even eliminate as far as possible the one-sidedness and shortcomings of each type, with the objective of attaining a harmonious synthesis of the personality. Added to the typological diversities that are due to the pupil's makeup, there are the diversities of a dynamic nature which express the different individual rhythms in the development of the various capacities, and rhythms of learning and of action. These rhythms must be observed and taken into consideration. This is true in relation to the education of all young people, but particularly so in regard to the gifted and the exceptional ones. 4. Physical education. Gifted children are especially in need of physical education in order to balance their mental and imaginative activities, which are often excessive, and to help them to keep their feet on the ground. What is generally done in this respect is inadequate or ill-suited. A few hours per week of gymnastics or participation in strenuous competitive sports will not solve the problem. What proves really helpful is direct and prolonged contact with nature. For this reason, the educational center should be located in the country and be in some respects similar to an agricultural college or colony. The life at the center should be characterized, to a certain degree, by natural living. The pupils should work in the garden and the orchard and raise small animals. These activities would also offer many good opportunities of learning by doing. A more specific kind of physical education consists of methods of rhythmical movements, both regulated and free, which enable one to acquire a proper awareness, control, and command of one's body, biopsychosynthesis. There are several good methods of this kind, for instance that of Dalcroze. Also, appropriate games in the open are useful for the same purpose. 5. Intellectual education. This will not be based on memorization, as unfortunately is still too often the case, but on the active training and use of the mind. The pupils will not be asked to study and repeat, almost verbatim, the contents of textbooks. Instead, they will be taught to find out for themselves what they need to learn by the intelligent consultation of textbook treatises, grammars, dictionaries, encyclopedias, and so on. Particular emphasis will be placed on the science which is most important to man, psychology. Many of the most significant facts and laws of the psychological life, if presented in a living, humanistic way, that is referred to their own experience and problems, can be easily grasped by boys and girls of high school age. They can also be trained to develop, use, and control their minds through well-graduated exercises for concentration, reflection, and meditation. 6. Education of the imagination and the feeling nature. Imagination is of great importance in human life and has more influence than is generally recognized. Therefore, it should receive particular attention. The training could improve exercises of visualization, creative imagination, and so on, so that the young people will gradually learn how to control and rightly use this precious function, which, if not constructively applied, often has harmful and even dangerous effects. The control and utilization of the emotional energies and the development of a finer sensitivity will be adequately taught. All the best methods will be used, both those transmitted by the wisdom of the centuries and those based on the latest developments of psychology. Here, we can only briefly mention that every repression and unnecessary restriction should be avoided, but the pupils should be taught how to keep their exuberant emotions and drives within proper bounds and how to transmute and sublimate them. 7. Education of the will. The will is the essential and most precious power inherent in man, and yet it is the one that has been neglected most, both in family and in school education. One can say that a widespread, even if unconscious, tendency exists to prevent or discourage the development of the will, despite the crying need for greater self-discipline. The oppressive and authoritative methods used in the past have proved ineffective and have rather been causes, though not the only ones, of the rebellion against discipline so widespread among modern youths. It is, therefore, a matter of urgency to encourage and help young people to train and develop their will as a means of self-discipline, as well as of success in life. The methods for this purpose are available. In reality, all the previously mentioned aspects of education, physical, mental, emotional, creative, and so on, are, indirectly, exercises for the development of the will, but they could become more effective if they were consciously used for that purpose also. In addition, there are other specific methods for the development of the different aspects or phases of the will: deliberation, decision, planning, and action. 8. Spiritual education. Super-gifted children show at a very early age an interest in philosophical, moral, and spiritual subjects. Lita S. Hollingworth has observed that children, even at the early age of 6 or 7, are interested in the problem of the origin and destiny of man, and ask for rational explanations of life and death. See Hollingworth's book, Children Above 180 IQ. They often possess real intuition and spiritual illumination. Typical, among others, is the case of the English poet Wordsworth, who added to the title of his famous poem, Intimations of Immortality, the subtitle, Remembrances of Early Childhood. These children, as well as all others who at any age put similar questions, have a right to receive adequate answers. Their questions must be taken seriously. One can use such opportunities to instill into them a spiritual conception of life, make them feel the greatness and beauty of the universe, and the admirable order that characterizes it. A sign that there is a superior mind that created it, rules it with wisdom, and guides it toward a glorious goal. From this general picture, one may gradually proceed to giving them more detailed information, according to one's own faith, but seeing to it that the feeling of wonder and mystery remains with the child. At the same time, one must observe and encourage all spontaneous manifestations of a spiritual nature, such as higher aspirations, intuitions, and illuminations that might arise in them. Also, any parapsychological sensitivity they might have and demonstrate should never be denied or ridiculed, but should be explained to the pupil as far as possible and be wisely watched and regulated. But the chief aim of spiritual education is to help the pupil realize that he, as well as all human beings, is in truth and essentially a self, a spiritual being, and to make him understand and feel the dignity and value of this great inner reality, showing to him all the opportunities it offers. 9. Education in right human relations, interindividual psychosynthesis. This important aspect of education is, in reality, part of the spiritual education, because to be spiritual does not mean only to be able to transcend the little self in a vertical direction through realization of the self and communion with the Supreme Reality. It also includes a horizontal attitude, that is, communion of thought and love and harmonious collaboration with all fellow creatures. This expansion is achieved through concentric circles, which gradually include ever larger groups from the family to humanity as a whole. Therefore, education should aim at creating and producing and bringing about the following. A. Right family relations. The family can be regarded as a human cell, almost as a small collective entity. Here, the parents have a difficult and noble task, for which, unfortunately, they are often not prepared. While in some respects their problem may be easier when dealing with highly gifted children, it is in other ways more exacting and difficult. When parents are not able to cope with such a task, they need the help of competent educators. In any case, parents should have the wisdom demonstrated by birds, which make their young ones leave the nest when they become able to fly with their own wings. Such a moment obviously arrives earlier than usual in the case of gifted children. This does not mean a sudden detachment from the family, but rather a gradual widening scope of the youth's human contacts and independent experiences. In certain cases, due to conditions in the family or the particular needs of the child, a more or less prolonged stay in an educational institute is advisable or even necessary. B. Right relations with others of the same age. These are necessary in order that the development of the personality may take place in a normal and satisfactory manner. It is no less, rather even more, unnatural for a child to live all or most of the time with adults than it would be for adults of the age of 30 or so to live only with nonagenarians. Here we find one of the most difficult problems in the education of the gifted, and particularly of the highly gifted child. The company of normal children or youths of their own age does not satisfy them, and reciprocally, the normal ones do not understand or appreciate the gifted, and are often hostile to them. Nor does the company of older children constitute a satisfactory solution, because in this case also, tensions and conflicts of various kinds easily occur. This has been observed and emphasized by various American educators, such as Terman, Hollingworth, and so on. See pages 101 to 103 in the book The Gifted Child, edited by Paul Whitty. Therefore, the best solution for such children is to have the company of their equals in a psychospiritual sense. This can be achieved to some extent in classes or schools for the gifted, but much better in a special educational institute. C. Right social and collective relations. These concern the many groups and communities with which an individual is or becomes connected, and cannot be considered in detail here. The general task of the educator in this respect is that of helping, wisely and appropriately, to distribute the pupil's sense of belonging to each of the various groups. At the present time, particular attention should be given to balancing the rightful feeling of national belonging and the natural love of one's country with the respect and appreciation due to all other peoples, and with the wider and higher realization of human brotherhood and world citizenship. To these wider identifications, highly gifted young people are particularly inclined. The best way to foster such planetary consciousness is personal acquaintance between individuals and groups of various countries, particularly when it develops into the deeper and more intimate mutual knowledge and appreciation made possible by living and working together. For this reason, as well as for others, an educational center such as we have mentioned would gather pupils from various countries, and all of them would be taught the principal modern languages. The natural method should chiefly be used, that is, the way in which a small child learns, speak, and understand its native tongue. This has been explained at length in my paper titled A Psychological Method for Learning Languages, which is available at this website. 10. The environment and the educators. Since the time of Plato, the educative value of a beautiful and harmonious environment has been recognized. Such helpful influence exercised by natural scenery, by attractive living quarters, and by the arts, chiefly music. But most of all, it resides in the human and spiritual qualities of the educator. An interesting inquiry concerning the qualities that children consider most desirable and helpful in the personality and behavior of teachers showed, on analysis of 14,000 replies, the following traits, mentioned in order of their frequency. 1. Cooperative democratic attitude. 2. Kindliness and consideration for the individual. 3. Patience. 4. Wide interests. 5. Pleasing personal appearance and manner. 6. Fairness and impartiality. 7. Sense of humor. 8. Good disposition and consistent behavior. 9. Interest in pupils' problems. 10. Flexibility. 11. Use of recognition and praise. 12. Unusual proficiency in teaching a particular subject. See pages 106 and the following in the book The Gifted Child mentioned earlier. While one cannot, of course, expect an educator to be an ideal person, the aim in the choice and training of the teaching staff for such a center would be to ascertain the existence and promote the development and use of as many as possible of the qualities listed. In a certain sense, the essential problem with gifted children consists in finding and training gifted educators. Through such integral education, highly gifted children would be helped to assume their proper place and to function within the vanguard group of the builders of a new and better civilization, the creators of a higher culture, the first representatives of a humanity led and pervaded by the Spirit.